Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. Lots of interesting news breaking this morning. We are going to be taking a look at this blockbuster New York Times poll that, whew,
Yikes.
bad for Joe Biden. Really bad for Joe Biden. I mean, like, down double digits in Nevada. Bad for Joe Biden. So we'll dig into that because there are a lot of other interesting numbers besides those top lines. We also, in light of that news, we're going to show you Biden's favorite news anchor, basically pushing the alarm button and saying, hey, you are on a path to defeat right now. So there is a lot of freak out, totally justified on the Democratic side of the aisle right now. We also had Trump back in the courtroom yesterday, and what was probably the most essential testimony in this hush money case of Michael Cohen. We'll tell you what he said and what it could mean. Also, GameStop is back. Roaring Kitty is back.
Yeah, he's back.
What was the percentage increase yesterday?
As of this morning, GameStop up about 75%, AMC stock up 100%. All thanks to Mr. Keith Gill himself.
Very interesting times we're living in. Yes, indeed. At the same time, we got some major developments with regard to Ukraine that we did not want to lose sight of, both on the Russian side and on the Ukrainian side. So we'll break those down for you. A lot going on in Israel, of course. We're going to bring you a CNN report about detainees being tortured by the Israelis, an Israeli whistleblower actually bringing them these allegations. Quite stunning there. We also have IDF generals revolting against Bibi. Their reasons really interesting, what this says about the divide in Israeli society. And we have Senator Lindsey Graham suggesting, hey, how about we just nuke Gaza? How about that? Joining a growing list of politicians who are suggesting just out-and-out genocidal atrocities against Palestinians. We also are very excited to talk to Arjun Singh. He's a producer for Lever News' new revamped podcast, which I have to tell you guys is excellent. I've been singing his praises. Saagar can vouch. They have really upped their game. And he's done some fantastic reporting looking inside the Biden administration's unconditional support for Israel. And this comes at a time when we have yet another significant official in the State Department resigning over his moral objections to the policy vis-a-vis Israel and the unconditional support, the flouting of American laws in order to support Israel. And it's a Jewish man who resigned too, so it's quite an interesting moral position that he is taking and worth taking a look at that as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's an active duty U.S. Army major. I mean, it's not something you just throw away.
Right.
You know, I mean, this is an entire career. Somebody who's already reached that rank has spent a long time in the military, probably on a career track. That's not something that you just do lightly. We had similar resignations that happened in the past. It used to get a lot of attention here. I seem to recall whenever it was under Trump. Under Biden, you may be able to hear about it on a show like ours.
Yeah.
That's about it. Maybe if you're on Twitter, if you're on the right Twitter. But anyways, as Krystal said, we've got a great show for everybody today. Thank you to everybody who's been signing up for premium, breakingpoints.com. And as we continue to tease, we do have a major announcement that is coming. That's all I can say at this point, but it's going to be a massive upgrade in our premium service. We're always thinking about everybody, especially on the heels. We've only got 2 weeks to go, a 3-year anniversary, which is pretty crazy. Was really reflecting on it yesterday. We finally got our personal YouTube 1 million plaques, and I put it up in my office, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. That actually meant something.
How long were we at Rising?
I think it was about 2 years. So
we've significantly surpassed the time we had together at
absolutely.
Rising.
Yes, yeah. So it was June of 2019 is when I officially started hosting Rising with you. I think that's like the official jump off point. And yeah, we left exactly 2 years later. So there you go.
Wow.
June of 2021. So at the very, very end. So,
it's crazy, 3 years to me, because to me it still feels like new. Like
it could be yesterday.
Yeah, like you're still baby show, getting our legs under us, et cetera. So it's definitely flown by.
You're the ones who made it possible.
Thanks,
so we love you and we thank you. All right, let's begin with Biden, as Krystal said. I mean, this is something that came out yesterday. We teased a little bit in our show, but we wanted to spend a lot of time here because, I mean, this is the biggest flashing red sign that you could possibly have for Joe Biden. The polls have basically been steady now and steadily declining for him. Let's go and put this up there on the screen. I mean, this is just stunning stuff. So here we have in the 5 key states, quote, young and non-white voters expressing discontent with Biden. And the overall top line numbers here are absolutely brutal. So we have Donald Trump only behind Joe Biden in one swing state, and that's the state of Wisconsin. And that's actually inside the margin of error. So 45% for Donald Trump and Joe Biden at 47. But everywhere else, in Pennsylvania, Trump is up by 3. In Arizona, Trump is up by 7. In Michigan, Trump is up by 7. In Georgia, you have Trump up by 10 points. And in Nevada, you have him up by 12 points. So, I mean, so massively outside the margin of error that there's basically only two options. Biden is on track for like catastrophic loss, or the polls are totally wrong again. And by the way, I do not want to discount that possibility, because it's not like the New York Times Siena poll was all that correct. I'm just going to put that at the top.
In the past, it was off in the other direction.
Exactly.
It overstated. In the last election, the last New York Times Siena poll going into Election Day significantly overstated Joe Biden's support, including, I think they had him winning Wisconsin by like 10 points or something like that.
It was by barely.
So who knows? Like, you have to hold that possibility out there, especially given Democratic Party results, which have outperformed polls in a lot of these special elections. But 12 points in Nevada, that is way outside of the margin of error. And also, Saagar, it's not like these poll numbers are, the only ones out. They're not a big outlier. We've been seeing, even at the times when Joe Biden seemed like he was doing a little better in the national head-to-heads, the battleground polls that would come out, they've always looked terrible. But, this is considered really a gold standard poll. They invest a lot of money. There's a lot of credence put into these polls, especially in Democratic circles. And for it to be this disastrous is really something.
Absolutely. What's even more interesting, and of course counter narrative, is where are these gains coming from? So I will read. Mr. Trump's strength is largely thanks to gains amongst young, Black, and Hispanic voters. Actually, Biden's doing pretty damn well amongst white folks, and even better if you want to consider suburban ladies. Now, it says here, the sense Mr. Biden would do little to improve the nation's fortunes has eroded his standing amongst the young, Black, and Hispanic voters who have usually represented the foundation of the Democratic Party. They have found that the three groups want fundamental changes to American society, not just a return to normalcy. Few believe Mr. Biden would make even minor changes that would be good for the country. I can't say that they're wrong, given what we've had for 4 years right now. It says that amongst 18 to 29-year-olds, Trump is actually tied with Joe Biden. Amongst young voters and Hispanic voters, these are groups which previously would vote for Biden at 60, almost 70% margins. I only have to go back to 2016 to see Donald Trump only win some 30-something% of the Latino vote. I mean, right now he's on track to win 50. And if you segregate that out and make it just men, it's probably on track to win a pretty large majority of those votes. I mean, that's a massive realignment that's happened just in the last 8 years. Now, here also, amongst Black voters, it says that Trump is currently winning about 20% of Black voters. That would be the highest level of Black support for a Republican presidential candidate since the enactment of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And Gaza, of course, is one that we can't erase inside of this. We see significant dissatisfaction from President Biden's left on the issue of Gaza. But Krystal, I'll let you go on this, because what you flagged is that Gaza is the only thing where left voters are really abandoning Biden. It's actually a lot of very centrist types who are like, I'm done with this guy. I can't do with it.
Yeah, so I'll read you what their write-up, and then we can talk about it a little bit more. They say Mr. Biden's losses are concentrated among moderate and conservative Democratic-leaning voters who nonetheless think that the system needs major changes or to be torn down altogether. There's so many things in there that, in your language, Saagar, is counter-narrative. First of all, the fact that these quote-unquote centrist voters just want, don't mess with the status quo very much.
Oh, I know.
Actually, these voters are like, man, screw this whole system. This doesn't serve anybody. I hate this dude. I don't care if you're threatening me with Trump. It's a radical view of the country, even from people who are self-described as moderate or conservative Democratic-leaning voters. Trump wins just 2% of Mr. Biden's very liberal 2020 voters who think the system at least needs major changes, compared with 16% of those who are moderate or conservative. However, so most of the losses from Biden's 2020 coalition are coming among those more centrist or more conservative Democratic-leaning voters. However, the one exception is on Gaza, where you do have erosion among Biden's support with young and more progressive voters. That's what they say. One exception is Israel's war in Gaza, an issue on which most of Mr. Biden's challenge appears to come from his left. Around 13% of the voters who say they voted for Biden last time but do not plan to do so again say that his foreign policy or the war in Gaza was the most important issue to their vote. Just 17% of those voters reported sympathizing with Israel over the Palestinians. So if you take the pool of voters who say, I voted for Biden last time, I'm not doing it again, 13% of them, it's over his policy vis-a-vis Gaza, and overwhelmingly, it's because they find him to be too supportive of Israel, too ambivalent to the humanitarian concerns of Palestinians. So just problems really across the board for Biden. And Saagar, zooming out, because you're right to point out that much of his erosion, if not all of his erosion, comes among the young and among non-white voters. Thinking about young people in particular, not only do you have, obviously, Israel's war in Gaza, which we've talked a lot about, the political impact of that as well. But, the real case that the Democrats make is you got to vote for us to be a bulwark against Trump. Trump has been a fixture of public life for nearly a decade now, in terms of political public life.
Yes.
And so if you think about people who were coming of age when Donald Trump was, running his campaign and ascending to the presidency, he doesn't feel abnormal to them. This has been their adult life. So this idea of this is extremely abnormal and we have to do everything we can to forestall this potential result of Donald Trump ascending again to the presidency, it just doesn't carry the water with them that it may with older voters who have a different conception of what the American presidency should be like and a much longer, personal history and experience of what that office looks like, where Donald Trump still feels like this giant abnormality in American politics. And so I think that's part of the generational divide here as well. And then, look, obviously, Biden being old and enfeebled and the people feeling really bad about the economy. These are terrible things for him that, maybe he should think about potentially running on an actual plan to deliver for people on the economy versus what is clearly not working, which is just saying abortion and Trump is bad.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, literally all you have to do is look at any of the signs that matter the most. And I think that's the ability to make it. You have huge problems with wages. They always brag about their unemployment rate. Unemployment rate doesn't matter when you have millions of people who've either dropped out of the workforce, underemployed, not making enough wages to keep up with inflation. I've got it right here in front of me. Even the front page of the New York Times this morning is high interest rates are hitting poorer Americans hardest. Yeah, you think? Imagine having to explain that to your New York Times subscriber audience. You're like, wow, I had no idea that it was so much more difficult out there. That, it turns out if you're 28 or 29, great point, which is if you're 28 or 29, only a couple years younger than me, then basically your entire adult life, Donald Trump really became a true political figure with birtherism. That was 2011. That's been more than a decade now. It's 13 years of your entire political life that you've known about this guy. You've seen look, as somebody who was there, young and coming up in the business, seeing what he did in 2016, that was crazy. This time around, it just doesn't feel as crazy anymore because it's not. We lived through the presidency. I know what it was like. It wasn't that bad. A lot of people, especially when you compare the economic data, you're like, listen, it was unambiguous. I definitely was better off under Trump. Now, there's a lot of factors, but the Biden administration basically wants to sit there and let you explain to them why it's not their fault, it's actually Trump's fault, and democracy and abortion and all of that. And I won't discount that. I think it is very important. But the truth is it's just not landing, and I don't think it should. Let's put this up there as well on the screen because we're leaving out RFK Jr. in some of this analysis. They also included RFK Jr. in the three-way, or actually in a five-way race. So here's what we have. In Nevada, and this is with RFK Jr., Jill Stein, and all of them who are included. In Nevada, Trump is up 14% with RFK Jr. on the ballot. In Georgia, Trump is up 8% with RFK Jr. on the ballot. In Wisconsin, Trump is up 40%, or it's up by 1% with RFK Jr. Michigan, Biden is only up by 3. Pennsylvania, Trump is up by 4. Arizona, Trump is up by 9. Now, keep in mind that you might be tempted to say, this means that RFK Jr. is taking more away from Trump or from Biden. It's actually not true. He draws equally according to these crosstabs, both from Joe Biden and from Donald Trump. It's just that the lead for Trump gets exacerbated when you also include Jill Stein in some of these, where you see both the Libertarian candidate and Jill Stein draw significantly more away from Joe Biden. So it is clear now, too, why Joe Biden has been so undemocratic in the Democratic primary and others, because it is very obvious that any third-party ballot is just devastating for him because it gives people options. The less options that people can have, they're going to be bad for him. Trump, too, by the way. I mean, even though he is leading in this, it's not like he isn't winning. In these cases, he's winning only a plurality, not nearly, any sort of outright majority in any of these states.
Can we put those numbers back up on the screen? Because I just want to emphasize the Nevada numbers, which are stunning. Okay, look at this. Trump 44, Biden 30% of the vote in a state that you won pretty handily. It wasn't all that close in the end.
No, it wasn't.
Last time around. RFK Jr. polling 11%. Mapstead, who's, I guess, anticipated to be the Libertarian candidate. Their convention is what, this weekend? Something like that?
I think so, yeah.
In any case, polling 2% and Jill Stein polling 1%. 30% of the vote. Zed Jelani floated on Twitter, which I think is an interesting theory, that part of why Biden is doing particularly bad in a place like Nevada is, I mean, for one thing, you have this younger, more working class and more diverse electorate where, you know, they're looking at the interest rate phenomenon, the fact like, I'm never going to be able to afford a house and how am I ever going to send my kids to college? And young people are looking like, what future do I possibly have? And, you know, it's directly downstream of that you see this huge gulf emerge in favor of Donald Trump. It's really, I mean, it's really astonishing. If these polls are anywhere close to correct, like, it's something dramatic would really have to change in favor of Joe Biden. You know, one other thing that I just want to point out, because it's a particular annoyance for me, is I saw all kinds of, you know, centrist types on Twitter, like scolding the lad, dare you criticize Biden over Israel and you're costing him the election, blah, blah, blah. Just, first of all, people have a right to criticize the president, especially when he's enabling with our tax dollars atrocities. So just from a moral perspective, that position to me is completely bankrupt. But second of all, it's not even consistent with where the biggest problems are for Joe Biden. Where's the scolding of the moderates and the centrists and the conservative-leaning Democrats who are fleeing him over a variety of issues, but I think economic issues in particular, and just their sense that he's too freaking old as well? Where's that scolding and freak out and, you know, preparing to blame them and throw them under the bus for handing the election or being secret Trump supporters or whatever? So there's a lot in here that really does dispel some of the media narratives about the contours of this election. But given how close it was last time around, it is true that any one piece of this coalition eroding away from Joe Biden, any one piece could be fatal for his reelection chances. And when you have multiple people, basically the only people who are really strong with him and been consistent are like old white people. Yeah. That's pretty much it.
Right.
And so when you have erosion everywhere else, what do you think the picture is going to look like?
Absolutely. You know, I would be remiss to important about Nevada. You know, the gas price in Nevada is still $4.40 a gallon. And actually, it's $5.20 in California. I don't know how you people do it out there. That's crazy. But Nevada, I mean, the economy in Nevada has always been very, very sensitive, not only to gas prices, to tourism, high inflation. That's going to affect people who are coming in, lower overall consumer spending. That's what they're particularly vulnerable to. So it would make sense to me also that they're very attuned. Their housing market has also always been crazy, basically since 2008. So all of that comes back to the actual fundamentals. Here you have, again, we'll play CNN's Harry Enten. It's just always amusing to see people in mainstream spaces have to grapple with what's going on. And here's what he had to say.
I think it's essentially saying that we have a divide between the Sun Belt and Great Lake battleground states, all right? You know, these are all 6 states that Joe Biden won last time around. They won it by the closest margin of any of the states he won. Look, these Sun Belt battleground states, frankly, for the Joe Biden campaign, these numbers are an absolute disaster. The smallest lead is in Arizona for Donald Trump. He's up 6. Look at this, 9 in Georgia, 13 in Nevada. My goodness gracious, my God. That is a huge lead. No Democrat has lost that state since John Kerry lost it back in 2004. How about these Great Lake battleground states? This is something that the Joe Biden campaign can work with. Look, Pennsylvania, Donald Trump up 3, but that's well within the margin of error. Wisconsin, Donald Trump up 1, well within the margin of error. And actually, a Joe Biden lead well within the margin of error, up a point here. This they can work with the Joe Biden campaign. This, the Donald Trump campaign, absolutely loves, and it looks like a lot of the other polling on the Sun Belt ballot. The Trump coalition is changing. That's basically what's cooking here. This is at least one of the big reasons why. So this is among likely voters in all these battleground states we just spoke about. Back in 2020, 84% of the Trump campaigns, the Trump coalition was white. Look where it is now. It's 78%. The non-white portion of the Trump coalition, it was 13% in 2020. Look at this now. It's 19%.
Yep. I mean, he's laying out exactly, and it's just the stunning nature that comes to him is amazing. We have some of these quotes just from people. It's always good to hear actual anecdotal why exactly I am the way I am right now. Let's put this up there on the screen. This is, for example, somebody who's voting split ticket, and Brian Dickens, he's a 25-year-old registered Democrat. He says, Jackie Rosen's been around a long time. He said he was considering splitting his ticket and voting for Trump. I think she's a very good Democrat. Let's go to the next one. I love people.
I know.
This guy, Terry Crabtree, he is a disabled 52-year-old from Maricopa County. He says, I'm not a party person. I am more for the state. And Gallego has done a good job for the state.
That's a Democrat, by the way.
He's a Democrat. And he says, I cannot stand Biden. I think he ought to be in prison. I think Trump should be in prison as well. I hate being given those two choices.
Relatable.
All right.
Relatable sentiment.
Next one. This is Joseph Gonzalez. He is a 60-year-old Hispanic truck driver in Milwaukee. This is of Tammy Baldwin. He says, I think I like what she's basically doing. But on Biden, he says, I do not like what Biden is doing. He is failing the United States. Next one, please. And what you see in all of these is that you basically have a lot of people who are willing to split tickets, because what we didn't show you is that in the same poll that had Trump winning every single swing state, the Democrats are up in every Senate state. Bob Casey beating Dave McCormick. You have Jackie Rosen. She's up over her opponent in Nevada. I mean, you actually have a case where, I mean, this would be nuts. So let's say this is correct, where Trump would win not only the popular vote but the Electoral College, but the Democrats would actually win every single contested election and keep the U.S. Senate. That's totally within the realm of possibility within here.
Absolutely is. And I think it's another, so the Democratic cope, which is with some basis, right, is that, okay, yeah, we've been seeing these polls that are bad for a while, including before the midterms when we outperformed, let's not forget that, but you know, when it comes to voters actually going to the polls, they are backing Democrats, and the polls are understating Democratic support. Ergo, we don't buy these polls. There's just an Axios piece this morning about how the Biden team genuinely doesn't believe the polls. They think it's all well and good. They think they're perfectly fine. And that is the basis for their reasoning. Well, what you see in these polls is that, no. The fact that we're voting for Democrats at the state level, for Congress, even for Senate, that has nothing to do with Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a different matter altogether. And there's a different sentiment when it comes to him. And so that's why it's so interesting to hear these swing state voters who are saying, no, actually, I like Ruben Gallego. I like Jackie Rosen. I think she's a good Democrat. I think she's doing a good job. Tammy Baldwin, I'm good with these sort of like more generic Democrats. But I have a specific negative sentiment about Joe Biden. And so, at least according to these polls, you could see, you know, some remarkable levels of ticket splitting that we haven't seen in years. I mean, the whole trend has been in the opposite direction, where people are party line voters and it's all tribal and it's all just divided by what your party affiliation is. And so there's very little splitting of the ticket between, you know, presidential candidate, Senate candidate, or on down the line. These polls say, no, Joe Biden is performing uniquely badly among all voters. And so you could very well see, if again these polls are accurate, a situation where the rest of the Democratic Party ticket does great. The ballot initiative, the abortion ballot initiatives for, you know, on the pro-choice side do fantastic. The congressional people running for Congress, for the House, for the Senate, et cetera, do great on the Democratic side. And Joe Biden gets his butt handed to him. That is a real scenario that is on the table right now. I just want to go back and make one comment about the Harry Enton analysis there, where he had, you know, the Sun Belt states versus the what used to be called the blue wall states, the old, you know, industrial Midwest. And it's very clear why Biden is kind of hanging in there in the blue wall states versus getting obliterated in the Sun Belt states, which he won last time with much fanfare, and this was the new Democratic coalition, et cetera, et cetera. It's because those Sun Belt states are younger and more diverse. And the industrial Midwestern states have more older white people. And that's who Joe Biden is continuing to do well with. So that's why you see that divide. And I think that Harry Enton is right to say, listen, if you're going to make a stand and you're going to try to eke out your narrow path to 270, the place to really place your bets is, you know, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania versus Nevada, Arizona, Georgia.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And look, let's not erase. It's still, you know, it's only May. There's several months to go. Abortion has scrambled everything. Recent evidence suggests that we should not undercount Democratic support. Further recent evidence says we should not underestimate Trump support in all of these. So we genuinely have no idea. But just to underscore how big of a problem this is, let's put this up there on the screen. This is what the Electoral College would look like if there were no toss-ups. According to the RCP polling average, Joe Biden would win 226 electoral votes. Trump would win a stunning 312. I mean, we have not actually seen an Electoral College victory like that in a long time in this country. So that would certainly be something to wake up on whatever in November, what is it, November 5th? I think it is, 2024. Please don't prosecute me for election misinformation. Saying that. I'm just speculating. I'm not putting it out there. But let's put the next one there up on the screen. This is also important to highlight because this is from an anonymous Twitter account, You Mishvoter, great guy, by the way. He says, or
follow.
Not who it is. We are back to 2016. People want to tear down the system entirely or want major changes. This highlights what you said. Most Americans think that the system needs to change. The system needs to be torn down entirely, 14%. Major changes, 55%. No change, 27%. And I think really what you see too is with Trump support about who they think is going to bring more change, this has always been Trump's fundamental strength. 25% of people think he's going to tear down the system entirely, and 45% of people think he will bring major changes. Trump was the chaos, shake things up candidate. And this gets right, as he aptly corrects, 2016 is the correct metaphor because 2016 was a status quo or a change election. 2020 was kind of, it was a change election, but I guess change away from the chaos. And this kind of validates a theory of politics that basically post-1996, every election, almost for the last 20-something years, has been a quote-unquote change election. It's just that who and what we think of change in that time is what really motivates people to come to the ballot box. This is a totally different switch from the early century. I'm reading a book right now called Grand Expectations, which is all about the United States from 1945 to 1972. It is fascinating for me to think and put my head in a space where Americans not only had faith, but a deep love and affection for institutions and for the status quo. We don't live in that time anymore. We're really living through 1930s again, or 1920s, like complete just dissatisfaction, chaos, not just from protests and others. We had a brief period in the 1960s, but this is a sustained period of people wanting change now for so long that it is very reminiscent of a very long time ago in American history.
Yeah, this theory of recent politics is that you have this yo-yo effect between almost even like presidential personalities. So you have, George W. Bush, who presents as this sort of like,
decider.
Low IQ, plain spoken, whatever. And then the backlash to that brings you Obama, the professorial, erudite, incredibly rhetorically gifted, et cetera, et cetera. Then from Obama, you go to, the populist rabble-rouser, at least that's his affect, Donald Trump. So, whereas Obama is this picture of sort of like civilized sophistication, Trump is this, rude, crude reality TV star. Then you go to Biden. So from the chaos of Trump, then it's like, can we just have things be like a little bit normal and like not crazy every single frickin' day? Joe Biden, the picture of like boring, standard normalcy in Washington, D.C., that especially, coming as he did among like COVID and the chaos that was going on there and the incredible dissatisfaction with, the state of affairs during COVID, he's able to come in and then what these polls point to and why they're significant is the landscape's really different from 2020, right? And by the way, the sense of like normalcy and the back to brunch pitch, it didn't really work out. Still a lot of chaos. World still feels incredibly unsettled, maybe more so than ever. So what is the Biden pitch this time around? Like, what is he really selling other than just, I'm not Trump and, abortion? That's it. So according to these polls, that's not going to be sufficient for a group of voters that overwhelmingly are like, now we got to do some things that are really different at this point because this direction we're going on is an absolute disaster. And, if you're thinking about who's going to overturn the apple cart, it's not Joe Biden, it's Donald Trump. And I think, plenty would argue like, okay, well, change for change's sake is not good and chaos is not, just inherently a good thing. But if you look at the number of people who say we want major change or to tear the whole system down, those people are overwhelmingly going for Trump, and they make up the bulk of American voters at this point. So in some ways, I think that those numbers are almost the most insightful into what the political climate is right now and why it is really not a political climate that is conducive to the reelection of Joseph Robinette Biden.
Absolutely, well said.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right, we're subscriber funded, we're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.